The alternate Mark Graysons are alternate versions of Invincible. While some possess altruistic motives and are considered good, the majority are dangerous, ruthless, and inherently evil. Many of these alternates were groomed by their fathers to seize control, whether they were raised on Earth or elsewhere. One of these versions is Mohawk Mark, identifiable by his distinctive hairstyle. In this video, we will delve deep into his story and how he met his end. In his dimension, Mohawk Mark and Adam Eve had grown close after Rex cheated on her with Duplicate. However, there was something off about Mohawk Mark. He didn't see things the same way others did. Mohawk Mark had this mindset, realizing how different he was from the people of his planet, and how stupid it was for him to waste any time protecting and fighting them without getting anything in return. He realized that the people of Earth could be worshipping him. He joined forces with Omni-Man, expecting the Teen Team's support in taking over the planet. Robots said Eve might actually have considered it, but after he killed Rex, whom she was no longer in love with but very close to, she fought him and ended up dead. Trog was cast out because he led a rebellion, and Mohawk Mark became the emperor of the Viltrumites, setting up a high-tech citadel in the Pentagon. Earth fell under Viltrumite rule, with Conquest as the main sentry, and Anissa and Lucan assuming lead roles. In this altered dimension, Monster Girl could transform into a bigger monster compared to the one in the main universe. She became a baby because she didn't meet Robot and couldn't find a cure for her reverse aging. As time passed, the Viltrumite forces relentlessly pursued the surviving Mauler, preventing him from cloning himself. The Mauler, witnessing the upheaval on Earth, changed his perspective and sought to restore order. Meanwhile, Mohawk Mark was approached by Angstrom Levy and promised to expand his empire across dimensions, leading to the Invincible War. On the first day, Mohawk Mark destroyed part of Stronghold Penitentiary, with ease, surprised at how low-tech it is. The main Mark battled him as they were evenly matched in strength and rendered Mohawk Mark temporarily unconscious. Day 3. Angstrom Levy arrived and sent Mohawk Mark and the remaining Invincibles to another dimension when they were about to attack him because he didn't fulfill his promise. Mohawk Mark was stranded in another dimension with the 7 other surviving alternate Marks. One of those 8 was Sinister Mark. The 8 of them talked a lot while stranded, mostly about what turned them evil. Weeks passed, and the 7 of them realized that a version of them was a jerk. Because they were starving to death, they all ate him. It was him or them, and Mohawk Mark hated him so much he almost did not want to eat him. Mohawk Mark decided not to eat any of them else because cannibalism is horrible. He was very thirsty, so he had to drink his own sweat to survive. The other 6 alternate Marks ate each other until only Sinister Mark and 2 other alternate Marks remained. Sinister Mark went insane and attempted to eat Mohawk Mark, but Mohawk Mark escaped. Later still, Angstrom Levy teleported the mainstream Mark to where they were, and he was stranded in that dimension as well with Mohawk Mark and Sinister Mark, who had killed and eaten the other 2 alternate versions aside from Mohawk. Mohawk Mark saw the mainstream Mark being attacked by Sinister Mark, slammed Sinister Mark away, and flew away with the mainstream Mark. Mohawk Mark teamed up with the mainstream Mark to stop Sinister Mark from eating them both. While flying, Mohawk Mark talked to the mainstream Mark a lot and confessed that it is really nice to be able to do so. He then helped the mainstream Mark fight Sinister Mark and killed him. Mohawk Mark shouted at the dead Sinister Mark how he made him eat another person and how he planned the cannibalism by turning the alternate Marks against each other. The mainstream Mark tried to stop Mohawk Mark, but it was too late, and then Angstrom Levy opened up a portal back to the mainstream dimension. The mainstream Mark instantly spotted it and returned home, but was trapped by Angstrom. Mohawk Mark then also re-entered the mainstream dimension and fought Angstrom until the mainstream Mark reminded him that he cannot return Mohawk Mark home if he is dead. And then, Angstrom traps Mohawk Mark. Angstrom has a change of heart and apologizes to the mainstream Mark for everything he has done before letting them both go. He opens up a portal to Mohawk Mark's dimension, who pulls Angstrom in with him before it closes. Mohawk Mark there tortures Angstrom so that he would fulfill his promise of giving him access to other dimensions he could conquer and could add to his empire. Angstrom refused due to his newfound responsibility of doing the good he originally set out to do before his accident. So instead, Mohawk Mark has his scientists cut the power out of Angstrom while keeping him alive until that is accomplished. He also started to miss Adam Eve, so he would hire cosplaying prostitutes with ginger mohawks to live in his personal chambers, dressed up like her. More time passed. Eventually, the original mainstream Mark has the mainstream robot figure out how to visit Mohawk Mark's dimension to end Angstrom Levy, as he's unsure if his family was still safe from Angstrom. Conquest met with them upon arrival and brought them to Mohawk Mark's personal chambers, believing they are negotiators from Thrag's rebels. However, Mohawk Mark recognizes the mainstream Mark from his last visit to the mainstream dimension and asks Conquest to leave. The mainstream Mark is uncomfortable with the prostitute Adam Eves, and Mohawk Mark simply tells him that in his dimension, she died and he needed to fill the void. The mainstream Mark asks about Angstrom, which Mohawk Mark understands and says that he had it taken care of, but also knows that the mainstream Mark still does not trust him. So he shows the mainstream Mark and robot, where his scientists are holding Angstrom, and explains that he is only keeping Angstrom alive until his scientists succeed. The mainstream Mark is horrified, which confuses Mohawk Mark, who thought that from what the mainstream Mark said that he was going to make sure Angstrom was dead or kill him himself. The conflicted mainstream Mark admits that he was not going to torture Angstrom if he was still alive. Mohawk Mark tells the mainstream Mark how if something would turn him evil, he could rule his world. The mainstream robot then realizes how the mainstream Mark could foil his plans and seizes the opportunity to activate a sonic pulse, which is one of Viltrumites' main weakness, making both Mohawk Mark and mainstream Mark cringe. The mainstream robot also kills Mohawk Mark's scientists, so there are no witnesses, and then fires a bomb into Mohawk Mark's mouth. Because his insides are somewhat more vulnerable than his outsides, when it explodes, it blasts out his eyeballs and causes his internal organs to burst in his throat. This, of course, kills Mohawk Mark, and then the mainstream robot proceeds to kill Angstrom Levy himself, stranding the mainstream Mark in Mohawk Mark's dimension.